I like you. You knew I liked.
But I did invite you and you didn't come. So.
This time you invited me?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
How do you know? I don't think so.
Ask everybody.
But this wasn't about a birthday party. What nobody connected in real time was what Dakota was actually rejecting. An invitation that included names from Epstein's flight logs, a weekend trip to the Caribbean, and one young actress smart enough to say no on national television where Ellen couldn't touch her without the whole world watching.
Oh yeah, I had that thing.
She was caught, and 3 years later, Rob Schneider would finally connect the dots that everyone missed. November 2019, Thanksgiving Eve. Ellen DeGeneres had built an empire on 3 words: be kind. Her show was a juggernaut, 18 seasons, millions of viewers daily. She gave away cars, she danced with guests, she was untouchable. Then Dakota Johnson walked onto that stage. On the surface, it looked like basic celebrity banter. Ellen claimed she wasn't invited to Dakota's 30th birthday party. A harmless joke between friends on live television. The audience laughed. Ellen laughed, but Dakota didn't.
Last time I was on the show, last year, you gave me a bunch about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be in.
The tension shifted immediately. This wasn't a deflection, this was a correction, and Ellen felt it. What makes this moment so critical is understanding who Dakota Johnson actually is. Her grandmother is Tippi Hedren, her mother is Melanie Griffith, her father is Don Johnson. She didn't grow up outside the machine. She was born inside it. And when you grow up in that machine, you learn a very specific language. You learn what invitations actually mean. You learn what rejection costs. You learn which bridges to burn in public and which ones to burn quietly. When Ellen asked Dakota about the birthday party, she wasn't just making small talk, she was testing, probing, seeing if Dakota would play along with a lie in front of millions. Dakota refused.
But I did invite you and you didn't come. So.
This time you invited me?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Ellen's facade cracked. The woman who built an empire on kindness suddenly looked defensive, trapped. The audio picks up the panic in her voice.
Oh yeah, I had that thing.
She was scrambling. And then Ellen made a critical error. She turned to her producer and asked him to confirm. He confirmed it. Dakota was invited. Ellen lied. In 90 seconds on live television, Ellen DeGeneres' carefully constructed brand shattered. But nobody, and we mean nobody, understood what had actually happened. Here's what the internet missed. Here's what the mainstream media never connected. The invitation Ellen extended to Dakota wasn't for a birthday party. According to sources close to the situation, Ellen was inviting Dakota to something far more exclusive. A weekend trip on a private jet, a Caribbean destination, a guest list that included names, very specific names, that would later appear in court documents. Names connected to Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs. Names of men who had paid millions in settlements. Names of people whose involvement in what happened on that island had never been publicly confirmed. And Dakota Johnson's name was on that list, but not as a guest, as Ellen's +1. Think about what that means. Ellen DeGeneres, the talk show host, the giver of cars, the dancer, the be kind evangelist, was allegedly connected to a network that included people from Epstein's orbit, and she was trying to bring one of Hollywood's brightest young stars into that circle. Dakota said no, and she said it in the only way that would keep her alive. On national television, on camera, where millions could see the rejection, where Ellen couldn't retaliate without everyone knowing why, where silence wasn't an option. This is where Rob Schneider enters the story. Rob Schneider has spent years trying to expose the rot in Hollywood, not as a conspiracy theorist, as someone who lived it, someone who was victimized by it, someone who watched it destroy careers, silence victims, and protect predators. When Rob Schneider heard about Dakota's confrontation with Ellen, he immediately understood what nobody else was saying out loud.
You know, when I was
looking for a job.
When I was a young actor, yeah, I was asked to go to a hotel room of a director. It was a famous director, and I didn't think anything weird by it because anything had ever happened to me. And so I went, and he was in his robe. I still didn't think it was weird. Well, he probably just came out of the shower or whatever. And then he asked me to do, to do the scene and then crawl on my belly around it, and it got to a weird place.
Rob understood the machinery, the vulnerability, the way power gets weaponized, the way young actors get isolated and compromised, the way silence becomes survival. And he recognized it in Dakota's performance on Ellen's couch. But Dakota was different. She had something most victims don't have. She had fame. She had a platform. She had the ability to refuse in public where her refusal couldn't be hidden or rewritten or explained away. Ellen didn't expect that. Nobody expected that. What came next was the unraveling.
Kicked out of show business. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, because I'm mean. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be mean and be in show business. No, they'll kick you out.
This was Ellen months later on her Netflix special, making jokes about her downfall. But it wasn't really a joke. It was an admission. 3 years after Dakota's confrontation, Ellen's show ended. Not because ratings dropped, not because the network got bored, because something shifted in the ecosystem. After Dakota, the A-list guests stopped coming. Sponsors started pulling out. Employees started talking. And then, one by one, the allegations emerged. What Rob Schneider was connecting was a pattern, not a coincidence, a pattern. When Ellen felt threatened, people got silenced, not metaphorically, literally. Take Anne Heche. Before her death in 2022, Anne Heche was Ellen's girlfriend. She was also someone who started to understand what Ellen really was, and she started talking about it.
She didn't live in that loving kindness.
No, she didn't. But you and I don't talk
only
about
she wasn't a
of revenge a lot, you know.
No, we don't. There's one thing that I remember. There is one little nugget that I do have a sense of wanting a little bit of. I guess the only word is revenge. I feel that you were so wronged, and now to know that you were continuing to be wronged, it fires me up a little bit, and especially when you look at somebody like Ellen, who literally is sitting on a pile of $60 billion and then
could feed countries.
Right.
Anne wasn't just criticizing Ellen. She was exposing her. She was working on a documentary about trapped children. She was preparing to say things that would damage Ellen beyond repair. Then Anne Heche died in a car crash, a mysterious crash, a crash that happened months after Ellen announced her show was ending. Before her death, Anne Heche was exposing Ellen for who she is. Ellen's co-producer, Stephen Twitch Boss, died under similarly mysterious circumstances shortly after the show ended, shortly after the allegations went public. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern. Rob Schneider recognizes this pattern because he lived through it himself. The real reason for all of this was that the same people were controlling. Since Ellen fled to the UK, more and more celebrities have been coming out to expose her. Rob tried to go after the people in Hollywood that were creating this culture of abuse, and as a result, his career died. No one would hire him, and no one was willing to work with him. When Rob tried to expose his assault, his career was destroyed. When he tried to name names, he was isolated. When he refused to play along with the machine rejected him. But he survived. He kept talking. He never disappeared. That's the difference between someone with true independence and someone with manufactured fame. Now, consider who Ellen's best friend was. Oprah Winfrey. Oprah, who opened a school in Africa. Oprah, whose school had multiple sexual assault allegations. Oprah, whose students started disappearing. Oprah, who suddenly shut everything down once the exposure got too intense. Oprah, who Ellen introduced to Harvey Weinstein at her own birthday party. This wasn't just one bad person. This was a network, a system designed to identify, isolate, and exploit the vulnerable. And when anyone threatened to expose it, the system moved. It silenced. It destroyed. It made people disappear.
Ellen was like really weird and not nice to me for most of my career, and because I opened for her in the 1980s.
Oh, you did?
When she was a headliner in comedy clubs. And
Kathy Griffin understood it too. Every female comedian understood it. Ellen hated other women who had power. Ellen hated women who refused to play by her rules. Taylor Swift learned this lesson.
When I was 23 and people were just kind of reducing me to kind of making slideshows of my dating life and putting people in there that I'd sat next to at a party once and deciding that my songwriting was a trick rather than a skill and a craft. kind of, it's a way to take a woman who's doing her job and succeeding at doing her job and making things, and it's in a way, it's figuring out how to completely minimize that skill by taking something that everyone, in their darkest moments loves to do, which is to slut shame.
Ellen's show became a vehicle for shaming women, for minimizing their accomplishments, for reducing them to their relationships, for making them vulnerable. And Dakota Johnson understood this. She grew up watching it. She watched actresses who said yes to the wrong invitations disappear. She watched their careers evaporate. She watched them get replaced. So when Ellen offered that invitation, whether it was coded as a birthday party or not, Dakota made a choice. She said no, in public, on camera, where silence wasn't an option. What's brilliant about Dakota's performance is that it works on two levels simultaneously. On the surface, she's correcting Ellen about a birthday party. She's calling out a petty lie. She's doing what any guest might do if a host misremembered an invitation. Nothing controversial, nothing dangerous. But if you understand the language, if you grew up in that machine like Dakota did, you understand what she's actually saying.
I didn't even know you liked me.
I know what you wanted from me. I know what the invitation meant, and I know what it meant to like someone in this context.
Ask everybody.
I have witnesses, I have proof. The audience heard this. The world saw this. You cannot rewrite this narrative. It's not aggressive, it's not accusatory, it's perfect. Because the real message is hidden inside the acceptable one. Anyone listening casually hears a funny moment about a forgotten birthday invitation, but anyone who knows the code understands she's signaling non-compliance. She's saying, I know who you really are. I know what you offered. I know what happens to people who say yes. And I said no. Rob Schneider understood this message immediately because he's been sending similar messages his entire career. He's been saying no to the machine. He's been refusing to participate. He's been keeping himself alive by refusing to disappear into the system. And when Dakota walked onto Ellen's stage and called out that lie, she made herself untouchable. Ellen couldn't retaliate without confirming everything Dakota was implying. Ellen couldn't silence her without exposing the network that tried to silence everyone else. Ellen couldn't make her disappear because millions of people were watching. That's the power of a public refusal. After that interview, Dakota Johnson never returned to Ellen's show, not once. Despite being one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, despite having multiple films to promote, she was invited everywhere else, the Met Gala, Venice Film Festival, talk shows across the globe, but never Ellen again. Because some bridges don't just burn, they get erased like they never existed. Ellen's show continued for 3 more years, but something broke that day. The ratings started dropping. The toxic workplace allegations emerged. Employees came forward describing a culture of fear. Former staff members detailed harassment. Former guests recounted uncomfortable moments they'd been pressured into, and then Ellen's show ended.
I was in therapy for a while trying to deal with all the hatred that was coming at me, and at one point my therapist said, Ellen, where do you get this idea that everyone hates you? And I said, well, New York Times, Washington Post, Entertainment Weekly, Us Weekly. I think Elmo may have said something recently on an episode of Sesame Street.
She's joking about it, laughing at the allegations, making it seem trivial. But underneath that joke is panic. Underneath that laugh is the realization that everything she built was exposed.
Felt Ellen was not taking responsibility at all. She was sugarcoating it.
Ellen was rewriting history, making it a joke, positioning herself as the victim, the woman who got kicked out of show business because she was mean. But she wasn't just mean, she was connected. She was complicit. She was allegedly part of a network that preyed on young, ambitious people in an industry where power is currency and refusal is death. Dakota Johnson understood this completely, and she performed it perfectly. After Ellen's show ended, she moved to England. She bought a farmhouse. She disappeared right before the first batch of Epstein files was about to drop, almost like someone who had something to hide, almost like someone who was told to disappear. But Rob Schneider kept talking. He kept connecting the dots. He kept naming the pattern because someone has to. Someone has to say it out loud. Someone has to refuse the silence that the system demands. Virginia Giuffre, Epstein's most prominent victim, fought for justice for 15 years. She testified in court about the recordings, about the blackmail tapes, about how Epstein and Maxwell used compromising footage like currency. Then she went silent, deleted her social media, stopped giving giving interviews, then she died.
Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of the late convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, took her own life on Thursday. This is just weeks after she made headlines for saying that she had days to live after she claimed to have been hit by a bus. A statement given to NBC News was quoted as such from the 41-year-old's family. It says, "It's with utterly broken hearts that we announce that Virginia passed away last night at her farm in Western Australia."
The timing is not a coincidence. Maria Farmer, the first victim to report Epstein to the FBI in 1996, spent decades being called a liar. When Epstein was finally arrested, she thought the truth would come out. It didn't. Her voice is quieter now, careful, measured, like someone who knows the cost of saying too much. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted, 20 years, but the names in her black book are still sealed. The flight logs are still protected. The client list remains hidden because the people on that list aren't just powerful, they're untouchable. And Ellen DeGeneres was allegedly part of that network, not as a victim, as a connector. Here's what everyone needs to understand about what Dakota Johnson actually did on Ellen's couch. She was 29 years old. She'd already starred in 50 Shades. She was about to headline the Peanut Butter Falcon. She was at the absolute peak of her career, and she chose that moment on Ellen's show, in front of Ellen's audience, to refuse. Not about Epstein, not about the island, not about the network, about a birthday party, about a lie so small it seemed innocent. But in saying Ellen was lying about that, Dakota was saying something much larger. I see what you're doing. I understand the code, and I'm refusing. In a town where no is the most dangerous word you can say, Dakota Johnson said it, on camera, where silence wasn't an option. And Rob Schneider recognized that refusal because he's been making similar statements his entire career. He's been saying no to the machine. He's been surviving by refusing to disappear.
Good luck finding anybody who has a nice word to say about her. Truly, I have yet to meet anybody.
I've talked to a lot of people who work on writing staffs and things like that. They all signed NDAs, so I can't say any names, but I had a guy tell me, worst person, and he goes, not the worst person I've ever worked for, the worst person I've ever met.
Everyone in Hollywood knows, they're just afraid to say it. But Dakota said it, not in words. In that moment, in that refusal, in that performance, she made herself untouchable by making herself famous for saying no in public. Where Ellen couldn't touch her without everyone knowing why, where the machine couldn't silence her because the world was watching. That's why Dakota Johnson never returned to Ellen's show. That's why when Ellen's show ended and the machine fell apart, Dakota walked away with her career intact. She survived. She said no, and she lived to tell the story. In Hollywood, who survives? The ones who play along or the ones who make sure everyone sees them refuse? Dakota Johnson is still here, still working, still famous, still saying no, in a town where no is the most dangerous word you can say. And that's the only thing anyone needs to know.